Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everybody to this Brexit webinar. The final preparations, are you ready? And we do hope that you are ready, but in case you're not, we're here to help. I'm here together with my two colleagues, Martin Meacock and Nick Neese. My name is Ronald Meijering. I am head of marketing for Descartes in the Benelux, and I will be your host and moderator during this webinar, meaning that I will be mostly behind the scenes, making sure that we're all running smoothly with the webinar, and also for any questions that you might have. What we're going to do is Martin's going to pick up most of the presentation. That will be around 45 minutes. So that would leave us approximately 15 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to put them into the system. There should be a question mark where you can put in your questions. Those questions will come to me, and I will be back at the end to discuss those questions together with Martin and Nick. Another practical thing, this webinar will be recorded just to make sure that in case you have missed something, you want to look back at something, you can. And also you can share it with your colleagues just in case you think that could be useful for them as well. So I think that about sums up the practical part. So then it is my big pleasure to introduce my two colleagues. Martin Meacock, based in the UK. Martin is Director of Product Management. He's been with Descartes around 6 years. Before that, he was at another company that was actually acquired, ECustoms, acquired by Descartes in 2014. Before that, he was in a advisory role, a consultancy role for about 16 years, advising companies about trade and customs. And he started at Her Majesty's Customs, so at a government body. So he's seen all sides of the table. So I think he definitely has all the luggage and the knowledge there is about Brexit. So he's going to share his insights with you. And then we have Nick Neese. Nick has been with Descartes about 16 years. He started off as an engineer, so really getting his hand dirty on the software solutions that we provide. And after that, he moved into a business consultancy role. And currently, he is an account manager, and his role is to advise our clients about optimizing their supply chain, and customs being one of them. So and Nick will be here to support at the end of the Q&A, just in case there are specific questions about the Benelux. So I think that about sums up the practical part and the introduction. So I think without further ado, I would like to hand over to Martin, if you're ready, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Ronald. And it is true to say, with my history of customs, I do have a lot of baggage. That is fair. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad you could make it on this webinar. It's a pleasure to talk to you all, and hopefully I can give you some insight and information about Brexit. So as we said, in terms of the agenda, we're going to start with an update on the Brexit negotiations and discussions and where we're at. Then we're going to have a quick recap on Belgian Customs, some updates that are coming along there before we move on to Dutch Customs, some changes that some of you are already familiar with, but just to give you an update where we are. That leads into just a quick update on the roadmap, how that feeds into our product delivery. And then, as Ronald said, after about 45 minutes, maybe a little shorter, we'll have time for any questions and answers that you may have. So where are we with Brexit? It's always an interesting time in terms of Brexit and negotiations. Quite a bit in the press recently. So first of all, we are looking at the end of transition. It's 11 p.m. UK time, midnight Central European time on the 31st December. The UK will then fully leave the European Union. We have already left, but we are in this period of transition whilst we were supposed to be getting ready to leave and to negotiate a free trade agreement. If you followed the newspapers and the news, that free trade agreement is yet to be agreed. There are several rounds of negotiations, they're ongoing, but there is obviously still quite a few sticking points. The Northern Ireland Protocol which was there in the withdrawal agreement that the UK signed, has thrown up some issues recently. The UK has decided to unilaterally, in a limited and measured way, decided to break some of those agreements through its UK internal market bill. So this was to replace the European Union single market, to have a UK internal market legislation. And in that, they made two changes to the withdrawal agreement. One was around state aid provisions. The UK government decided they didn't want to be bound by any European rules on state aid in Northern Ireland, and also around the provision of export or exit declarations from Northern Ireland into Great Britain. Obviously, that's caused some concern on the European side that the UK is looking to break an international treaty, and how that will affect the free trade agreement negotiations will have to be seen. That internal market bill actually passed its first reading in the UK House of Commons yesterday. There was some abstentions, people not voting or voting against. But currently, the UK government, the Conservative Party, have got such a high majority that it would take quite a rebellion to actually defeat any legislation at the moment. What we also don't know, there's an upcoming finance bill, whether they will try to introduce further changes to the withdrawal agreement in that finance bill. So this is likely to be towards the end of October, maybe November. And one area there will be around what goods is considered to be at risk of entering the single market via Northern Ireland. So again, this is a concern to the European Union. What goods could go from Great Britain into Northern Ireland and then through to the Republic and onto the rest of Europe without payment of EU duties or meeting EU standards. So at the moment, there's no indication that they will break that, but it is another area of contention between the UK and the EU. Even if there is a free trade agreement, that won't actually have a great deal of impact on the general processes. Even with a free trade agreement, there will be the need to do import and export declarations. So some people are saying, well, all of this will go away if the EU and the UK can agree a free trade agreement. It doesn't. It's not, the free trade agreement is not a customs union. It won't allow for the free movement of goods between the UK and the EU. In fact, it will only apply to EU or UK originating goods. So if anyone imports goods from China into, say, the Netherlands or Belgium, and then ships them onto the UK, they won't benefit from a free trade agreement because they won't be EU originating goods. So, as I said, there's no extension. The UK government has been adamant that they're not going to extend the transition period, but they are going to have a 6-month UK transition where they're going to have some simplified procedures and a open door type policy to try and avoid any congestion, particularly at the roll-on, roll-off ports. At the same time, they are introducing a range of new systems. So they've had to replace any system that had a connection with the European Union. So for Great Britain, the mainland, that from the 1st of January will be cut off from any European systems. Northern Ireland will still continue to have access. So what we're seeing in the UK is having to have dual systems, one for Great Britain and one for Northern Ireland. So that's particularly true of things like EMCS, the Excise Movement System, NCTS for transit. The UK will have its own import control system, so ICS for Northern Ireland, the European solution, but a new GB safety and security solution for GB, for the mainland. Also for things like traces, for animal products and plant health, the UK is going to have a new IPS system to manage those notifications. They're also introducing a new vehicle movement system service. I'll explain a bit more about this a little bit later on, but again, that's a system designed to try and facilitate movement of goods through the UK roll-on, roll-off ports. And some of you may have heard of another system called Smart Freight. This is a system that's designed primarily to avoid congestion around the Kent area of the United Kingdom, around Dover and Folkestone and the Channel Tunnel. So it's more about traffic management, making sure that haulage companies have got all their documentation in order, both for the UK and the EU side, before they're given a permit to actually drive to the port and be on the roads. And any vehicle that's found on the road around the Kent area without a permit is then subject to fines by the police or the traffic officers. Let's move on. So we did do a little poll just before this webinar, just to understand what people were feeling, what were they most interested in. And 54% of the respondents were still actually quite worried about the current position, about the lack of knowledge maybe, or the lack of information or clarity around the systems. And not surprising, an equal number were then worried about how that would impact on the deliveries to and from the United Kingdom. When asked what the companies were doing, then again, the majority of people were looking to find out information. How can they avoid these delays? What's the impact on the customs declarations? What's the impact on their supply chains? 54%, so over half, were looking to employ a customs broker or expediter to help them with their customs declarations and their supply chain. But quite a few were looking at implementing new software for doing import and export declarations, and obviously that then would involve getting a customs permit to allow them to do that. A similar number have seen that there's a need to start talking to their customers and suppliers about the supply terms. One thing companies have started to become more and more aware of is the Incoterms, the delivery terms that they're buying or selling on, especially if they happen to be delivered duty paid, which would make them responsible for the customs formalities in the country of destination. Not only would this be difficult, but it would also add an additional cost and expense to the overall process. So a lot of companies who would have just normally contracted with their customers or their suppliers on a deliver to door basis are starting to have negotiations and starting to renegotiate the actual terms around the deliveries. Some customers have started investing in building up extra stock. That's been impacted somewhat with COVID. But in the UK, for sure, we're seeing that that storage space was becoming a premium, that there wasn't a lot of extra space when we were looking at the original day one no deals. And that will continue to be a challenge. And therefore, it's not surprising that companies are also then looking at bonded warehouse. If you are looking to hold extra stock, or thinking that you need to hold stock for longer periods to have less movements, then it makes sense to think about bonded warehousing and putting those goods into stock without paying the duty until you need them. Finally, yeah, some companies, maybe the larger companies, the multinationals, are starting to reorganize their supply chains. You know, I for sure have heard stories of customers setting up distribution centers, some in the Benelux, some further east, changing their delivery routes, so delivering directly to UK for UK only, delivering to Europe for European distribution. So that has definitely been something that companies have been doing for the last couple of years, really, but now it's becoming more of a reality. So in terms of the actual Brexit flows, the red arrows here really show what is a normal process. So there would be a normal import and export declaration. There'd be some form of safety and security declaration, sanitary and phytosanitary checks on plants and animal products, and then really customs duties, whether they're full or whether there's a free trade agreement and zero, they would still apply. So that's whether the goods are coming from the EU into Great Britain, or from Great Britain into the EU, or from the rest of the world. The light blue arrows there are really for goods that are coming into Northern Ireland or between the EU. So in those examples, that there is no need for import and export declarations, clearly goods going from France to the Republic of Ireland, there's no need for a customs declaration. But for the UK, the most important part is there's no customs declarations between the north of Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Equally, there's no sanitary or phytosanitary checks and no customs duties. Now, this is where the contention is, because the only way that can be realistically achieved is by having some kind of border between the mainland and Northern Ireland, or having at least some processes. So that's the dark green arrow, where for goods coming into Northern Ireland from Great Britain, it will be an EU style declaration that will be made. So it have to be compliant with the EU Union Customs Code. There has to be a determination of whether goods are at risk of entering the Republic of Ireland, and then by default onto the rest of Europe. And if that's the case, then EU duties would be applied rather than UK duties. The UK does have provision to waive or refund those duties, and this is where the issue of state aid comes in. So when we're looking at the customs solution in Northern Ireland, there are provisions that a company that can't prove the goods will not go onto the EU can actually claim state aid to cover those customs duties. So that's some of the suggestions around there. Equally, for goods coming in from the rest of the world into Northern Ireland, and that's the bottom box there, the grey arrow, it's actually EU declarations, EU tariffs are applied for the same purposes if they're at risk of entering the EU. The EU safety and security declarations, and EU food and sanitary standards as well. So effectively, Northern Ireland has a foot in each customs territory, as a foot in the United Kingdom's customs territory and a foot in the European customs territory. So the EU position has been quite clear throughout. There has to be import declarations from Great Britain. There has to be export declarations for goods going to Great Britain. There's full sanitary and phytosanitary checks and documentation requirements. Obviously, there could be some agreements around that. One of the issues at the moment is the EU has yet to give the United Kingdom third country status in terms of whether it meets the sanitary and phytosanitary standards of the European Union. Not so much, the UK would say that they're being difficult, but the EU is saying, well, we just don't know what controls the UK is going to have. We know what they have today, but we're not convinced what they will be on the 1st of January. So, that's still an area. If they don't meet the requirements and they don't get third country status, then that could mean that food products would not be able to be shipped from the UK into Europe and also into Northern Ireland, because they just wouldn't meet the standards. Whether the UK would retaliate is unknown at the moment. And again, it's one of these things you'd hope that sense would prevail, and that both sides would come to an amicable solution, because in reality, overnight, the farms and the food processing sites in either territory are not going to change their processes overnight. I think the main concern is how the UK opens up the standards, particularly for, has been again in the press, food products from the United States in terms of chlorinated chicken or genetically modified standards. If the UK reduces its standards for imported products, they could, unless there's proper controls in place, find their way onto the European market, which is obviously something the European Commission does not want. So without a free trade agreement, full duty rates would apply. With a free trade agreement, yes, there'd be zero or reduced duty rates, but you'd also have the additional burden of determining whether goods meet the necessary rules of origin. So some of you may already be used to dealing with rules of origin, but these are generally looking at whether products have been sufficiently processed in a territory to mean that they qualify as originating in, say, the United Kingdom or the European Union. An interesting knock-on effect is that for anyone manufacturing in Europe, does the inclusion of UK components suddenly disqualify them from getting preferential trade duty rates into other countries? So if a company is manufacturing in, say, making cars in Germany, does the inclusion of UK parts then mean when they ship those goods to, say, Morocco, will the UK parts suddenly mean that they don't qualify as EU origin? Now, the UK has taken a strange approach on this when it's been renegotiating free trade agreements with countries such as Korea and Japan, is that it has agreed with those countries to allow EU goods to be considered as originating for the purposes of determining that rule of origin. Whether the EU decides to do the same and amend all its agreements, again, is another thing that still needs to be seen, and probably unlikely by the 1st of January. On the EU side, most of the movement to try and speed up the process through the ports and avoid congestion has really been left to the port systems. So you've got port base, obviously, in the Netherlands, Seapoint, Ibali in Belgium. And they've both got systems where you can notify that customs declarations have been made, that they've been released. They extended that some time ago to include roll-on, roll-off ferries, roll-on, roll-off cargo, and vehicle identifying numbers. So that's something that we're already doing. We've already got the capacity to send those notifications both on import and export. But in terms of the basic customs rules, there's no real changes. If we look at the UK, it's quite the reverse. The UK is making significant relaxations, at least for the first 6 months. So in principle, yes, an import and export declaration is needed from and to the EU. There are 2 customs systems at the moment. There's the legacy chief system, which is the older system. That will be mainly in use in Great Britain. There was a new system coming along called CDS. That was for some companies, they'd started that migration. We were the first company to go live on CDS in the UK. And that is the system of choice for Northern Ireland. The reason being, it's the only system of the 2 that can really cope with this dual tariff regime of EU and UK tariffs. What the UK is also doing is from the 1st of January for 6 months is effectively giving all companies access to entry in the declarant's records. So this would allow goods to just move through the ports without a formal customs declaration, and then they're giving them 6 months to lodge a supplementary declaration. Now, by the time that supplementary declaration is lodged, either the trader or their broker must be authorised for simplified procedures, but they have an additional 6 months to get that in place. This doesn't apply to any control goods. So if goods are subject to any kind of licensing or prohibitions or restrictions, or they're excise goods, so beers, wines, spirits, tobacco, they can't use this entry in the declarant's records. They would have to submit at least a simplified declaration, which would have to be submitted before the goods arrived in the UK. And then that would be processed within 24 hours of the vehicle actually arriving. So again, it's to avoid any kind of delays or congestions at the port in allowing the trucks just to roll off the ferry and move inland. There will be some phased implementation of sanitary and phytosanitary checks, but from day one, a lot of those will be done either at the trader's premises or away from the initial port of entry. For some of you, you're used to postponed accounting for VAT, so you don't pay VAT on import. At the moment, as today, the UK trader does have to pay VAT at the time of import. That's going to be changed from the 1st of January for all imports. So whether they're from the EU or from the US, Canada, China, VAT registered companies will be able to use postponed accounting. So it would give them some cash flow advantage in not paying VAT. As I said, we've got this goods vehicle movement system that will apply for transit into the UK from the 1st of January. and then for certain ports and exports from the 1st of July. And I've got a slide in a minute that just explains that process. Smart freight registration for Kent will apply from the 1st of January. The UK has also waived the need for any safety and security declarations for goods from the EU until the 1st of July. So they're not completely waiving safety and security declarations. They'll still be required for the rest of the world of traffic. But if goods are coming from the EU, then there's no need for a safety and security declaration until the 1st of July. The UK still remains in the Common Transit Convention. So we would expect to see a big increase in the number of transit movements, either to go across the United Kingdom, to across Great Britain to Northern Ireland, or to move the goods inland for clearance at places away from the initial port of entry. So that could be under temporary storage arrangements, which we call external temporary storage facilities, ETSF. Which is the same as you would probably know as RTO in the Benelux region, or at inland ports or airports. Just on the ports, some of you might have heard the term inventory linked ports. So I've just got a slide here. I won't necessarily go through it in detail, but these in the UK, these are systems very much similar to Portbase and SeaPoint. They provide the ports and the terminals with an integrated visibility of goods and the customs status. The big difference between the UK and the Netherlands and Belgium is that the customs declarations have to be sent via the port system. So unlike in Belgium and Netherlands, where you do your declaration and then notify the port of the declaration is actually submitted electronically via the port system, and they can then link the declaration with a container or with a trailer on their system to facilitate that automatic release when customs give the release notification. So I touched on GMMS. What is GMMS? It is an alternative to those inventory linked ports. What it will do is, instead of goods going to those ports and records, manifests being held by the port systems, it will make a pre-arrival declaration mandatory. So companies will have to do a customs declaration before the goods arrive in the UK, or they would have to be operating under entering the declarant's records or moving the goods under transit. It's being used to automate the Office of Transit. The Office of Transit is something fairly new for the UK, but it's used whenever goods move between customs territories. So now the UK is a different customs territory. It has to apply the Office of Transit mechanisms. So the timeline is for the 1st of January, all Northern Ireland movements must be using the GMMS system. And then from the 1st of July, exports to the EU and EU imports to Great Britain will have to use GMMS via certain ports. Now, at the moment, UK Customs haven't told us which ports they would be, but you can imagine they're likely to be the major roll-on, roll-off ports operating on the United Kingdom. So the way it would work is like this. The trader or the broker would submit their customs declarations before the goods move. They would then create a GMMS record on the UK customs system. They would link those declarations by their references, their MRN numbers, onto the GMMS. Once they've done all the declarations and any safety and security declarations, they would then close that GMMS record, so close the truck, a bit like closing a transit movement or closing a manifest. Ooh. That should be on silent. Sorry, apologies for that. So the driver then, once it's closed, the driver would then go to the port, and then it's up to the port to check that the GMMS record exists and that all the declarations on it are in a satisfactory status, so that they've been lodged, they've not been cancelled in the meantime. And that will be done through a series of APIs that is available through this GMMS system. The vessel would then be, the truck would then be allowed onto the port area. The truck would then go onto the ferry, or the trailer would be loaded onto the vessel. When the vessel departs, the carrier would then also have to tell UK Customs via this GMMS that the goods are on their way. So again, they say by reference to this GMMS record, these goods are now going to the United Kingdom. Therefore, during that crossing, UK Customs will start processing those declarations. Will start doing their risk analysis. Will start calculating the taxes. Will try and collect the money. So by the time the vessel arrives, there should be a go or no go indication. If there's a go, a clearance, the vehicle in theory would just be able to drive off. If for whatever reason Customs decide that they need to inspect the goods, they will send a notification to the person who created the GMMS record. They will also send a message to the carrier and the receiving port that that vehicle should be held and told where to go, whether that's in the immediate port area or maybe some inland location. So that's really Brexit and where we are. So still quite a bit of work to do with only 3 and a bit months to go. So on to Belgian Customs, some updates. Some of you or all of you will be aware that the EU is introducing a new regime for low value parcels, that the current VAT relief for parcels less than 18 euros is disappearing. That they're making the obligation to pay or to collect VAT. They're moving that on to the seller of the goods, so the Chinese seller or the platform, the selling platform. They will have to collect VAT from the customers when they buy the goods and pay that VAT like any other VAT registered business through an online portal that they're calling IOSS, a one-stop shop. Now to do that, they've had to introduce some new systems. They've introduced a new declaration type. It's a reduced data set, and in UCC terminology, that's called a H7 message. Now, some people are calling it H7. I think French Customs are calling their system H7. Belgian Customs are also calling it H7. Dutch Customs are referring it to as DECO, but it's still the same. It's this H7 data set, relates to low value parcels. It was due to come in on the 1st of January, but it's been deferred now until the 1st of July. There is some noise that Dutch Customs and also or the Dutch government and the German government particularly are trying to get that deferred even further because of the impact of Brexit, the impact of COVID, the resources required to implement these new systems. At the moment, we've got limited specifications for Belgium in particular. There's some data, but it's not very good specifications. The examples are incomplete or erroneous. So, you know, we're trying to work with Belgian Customs to try and get those improved. There is a new platform that they're going to be using with this H7 called IDMS. And you might see DMS used a bit of a side point, but DMS is becoming quite a frequent term in customs systems. So we're seeing IDMS here for Belgium. When I get onto the Netherlands, we'll be talking about DMS. Danish Customs are also calling their system DMS. And in fact, the UK CDS system, internally within Customs, they call that DMS as well. And that's primarily because ultimately it's probably the same system that's being provided by IBM. With Belgium, there's also e-globalization. Some of you may have received communication from Belgian Customs saying you need to start talking to your software suppliers about migration. Initially, we've done the work for the bonded warehouse module. We've developed that basic functionality. We've done internal testing. What came out in the last several weeks is we were getting a lot of inquiries for people that don't use our bonded warehouse module, but wanted a solution to send these e-globalization declarations. So that's the work that's now ongoing. We're looking at how we can extend the functionality we have for our bonded warehouse customers to customers that are operating their own bonded warehouse systems. The challenge we have is a bit like the H7, is that the system, the test system that we've got from Customs so far has not been the best. So I think there's been quite a bit of pushback from the software community in terms of the being able to test it, getting the right results, and I suspect that that is why Belgian Customs have decided to go directly to the trade rather than to continue to engage with the software community. But we'll see. There's some meetings ongoing. Hopefully we'll get a stable test system and we can finalize our development. There's also not directly applicable for you guys, but for us, there's a new communication gateway as well, EO gateway, which will replace the current B2B messaging with Belgian Customs. So again, that's something that we have to take care of over the next few months, especially with IDMS and the other system changes. So with Dutch Customs in the Netherlands, I mentioned Deco already. It will replace Venue. Venue is incompatible with the Union Customs Code. So Venue has been, for a number of years, supposed to have been finished, finalized, but they were waiting to have a replacement system. So it appears that Deco is that system. With Deco, we do have better specifications. I don't think there's a test system yet, but we're analysing those specifications as to how we can perhaps incorporate it into our products. DMS, I mentioned, so this is the replacement for AGS, particularly initially for those using the GPA or the SPA procedures in the Netherlands. We're still waiting for full specifications and a message implementation guide so that we've got something to develop against. But for people currently using GPA, there will really appears to be three options. Either revert to using normal procedures, so having to get a customs clearance before you remove the goods, or using entry in the declarant's records, but having to supply a notification when you make that entry, and then submit a supplementary declaration later on, or do entry in the declaration in the declarant's records, but have an exemption from making that notification. Now it seems to be they're limiting that option to companies that have actually at least submitted a declaration into customs warehousing. But again, this is the information we've had so far. Whether this will change or we get some further clarity, we wait and see. It's interesting to note that it seems that Dutch Customs are defining that the supplementary declaration has to be submitted within 10 days of the tax point. So if you remove goods on the 1st of September, then it appears to be what they're saying is you would have to submit supplementary declarations by the 10th of September, which is obviously quite different to the current deadlines for GPA. So just a quick overview for anyone that doesn't know on our customs coverage in Europe. In the UK, we have a product called ECustoms, which is a fully SaaS web-based application. We also have another on-premise application called ICE. We've probably got the majority of the large brokers, forwarders using our applications in the UK, and several hundred smaller freight forwarders, traders as well. I think our customers currently stand around 550 customers in the UK. In the Benelux, we've got Customs 4 for the Netherlands and Belgium. We've also got GCT for specific traders in the Netherlands. GCT also covers the Nordic region, so Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and then for certain countries we have some limited functionality. So for Germany, we cover transit and exports. We can offer transit in Finland, and also transit in France as well. So in terms of customs roadmap, really it's everything I've discussed. What we're focusing on the moment is clearly Brexit. We did a lot of development for day one no deal. We're continuing to do some more development in C4 and ECustoms to get those two systems to communicate together. But then it's really looking at the legal changes coming up, the globalization, the DMS, the H7 functionality. That's going to be our key focus on the next year, maybe 18 months, and obviously trying to fit what other enhancements we can around that. So as I mentioned, one of the things we are focused on ready for Brexit is this sharing of data between Customs 4 and ECustoms. For those of you familiar with Customs 4, the aim is to make it like a remote partner where you can trigger data to ECustoms from an export, and the same if you have an export in ECustoms to trigger the data to Customs 4. It's a partial solution, mainly because of the data that you would have available at the time of export. It doesn't replace really having a full integration with a back end or an ERP system. That would still be the ultimate solution. This is probably more for sharing data, which is then built upon either using templates or workflows to complete the declaration. But again, if that's something that people are interested in, reach out to us. We can explain it a bit more. One of the things that should be borne in mind is that to submit a customs declaration, you generally have to be established in that customs territory. So if you are thinking about doing UK declarations, you will need a UK office, a UK establishment to act as the declarant in those cases. So that's me. I think that was 45 minutes almost, so that's not bad timing. So Ronald, I'll open it up to whether we've got any questions and answers.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely spot on, Martin. Indeed, 43 minutes. Excellent, excellent. So let me see about the questions that have come in. So that was a question here. So no customs declaration for goods between Republic of Ireland and EU, but what kind of docs does a haulier need to carry when transiting UK with these goods?
Okay, so if it's transiting the UK, it would be NCTS. So it would be what you would have called the T1 process. So you'd start a transit movement in the Republic. So whether that's at your own premises as an authorised consignor or at the port, Dublin, and then that GMMS system would be used to report the goods to the Office of Transit. That would then allow you to move the goods across the UK, out of the UK, and then you would use, again, you'd have to report the transit into Europe. So if that was in France, there's a process where you give the transit MRN number to the ferry company or Euro, the Channel Tunnel. I guess if you were coming into Belgium or the Netherlands, you'd use the port base and sea point systems to do the import notification and give them the transit MRN, which would get released through the port, assuming that you weren't clearing at the port of arrival. Hopefully that answers the question.
Hopefully, and if not, then please reach out and we'll try to explain a little bit further. Let's see other questions that came in. Just one second. So UK transit to EU. Let's see. Is for automotive following allowed? Only report one general tariff code, or is a UK customs agreement needed to do so?
So I think this is whether you can bulk multiple products under a single tariff code. There are some general rules about grouping of tariff codes. I would say transit is generally at 6 digits anyway. So if you do a transit declaration, you have to declare goods at 6-digit level, not at the 8 or 10. But I can't think of any special agreements that customs have given about grouping lots of different products under a single tariff code. I think that was the question. If not, come back with it.
Okay, so let's see. Another question was a bit about the same. So UK transit to EU. Can multiple owners be reported on one transit document if the haulier drives from UK location A to EU location B?
Yes, if they're all on the truck at the beginning. So yes, you can declare consignee, consignor at item level. So in effect, you would declare owner 1, item 1, 2, and 3, owner 2, items 4, 5, and 6, owner 3, item 7, for example. So yes, you can have different consignee, consignors on a single transit movement, but the goods would have to start and finish at the same place. You can't do a what I would call a milk run and pick up goods, and you would have to do the transit at the last point, but you wouldn't be able to discharge part of the goods when the goods arrive in the EU. They'd all have to be discharged at the same place.
Okay, thanks. Well, they keep coming in, so hope you're ready for a couple of more, Martin, or maybe Nick, to jump in.
Yeah, Nick,
so,
please.
So, Martin, you mentioned 3 port systems in the UK, MCP, etc. Is this also applicable to Ro-Ro ferries or only for sea shipment?
So you have to use a specific port system where that port system is used. So imagine, you have to use port base at Rotterdam. You can't use port base at Antwerp. So it's the same. You have to use MCP at Felixstowe. But if the goods were coming in through a Ro-Ro port, you can choose any of the CSPs. So you're free to choose one of the 4. And in fact, Descartes is also one of the CSPs. We operate the rest of the world imports into Dover at the moment. So we're an option if you're looking to do import declarations into Ro-Ro ports. But it really depends if that port is operating a specific system. If they are, we have to use that port. If they're not, you're free to choose which one.
Okay. So the next one, I've put it in the chat to you. I'll read it out, but then you can read it as well. So that it's quite a long question. So
I've
the
got to
question
find my chat now. Oh no, I found it. Yeah.
You have found it. About the e-globalization in Belgium. You are saying that the testing system was not that good, but we heard that 2 other software providers are already starting up with pilots in the next few weeks. What's the time schedule for us to be ready to start testing for non-bonded warehouse users?
So, yeah, okay. So I saw that, yeah. So, I mean, I think what we're doing now is the last information we got was that it wasn't good. And, I'll be honest, we find this regularly with customs, not just in Belgium, but in the Netherlands, UK. I said we were the first to go live on CDS. That was 2 years ago. We went live with CDS. They've only gone live. We got 3 customers. I think there's only 10 customers that have gone live. And we spent a huge amount of time testing the custom system, and I think that is our concern with some of these, like with e-globalization, is how much time we spend testing the custom system, the Belgian custom system. So it's good that some software companies are getting to a pilot stage. It perhaps shows now that it is a more robust system. In terms of scheduling, I suspect that we'll probably be into Q1 before we will be able to start offering that up. But we really need to complete our internal testing, which we're restarting now.
Okay, thanks. So let's see, another question. If we send goods on a T1 to the UK from the EU, do we have to do the clearance import still via the UK port community system?
Depends where you discharge the transit. So if you're going to discharge the transit at the port, then yes, you would. If you're going to move it inland somewhere else, then it really depends where you're going to discharge the transit. So if you take the goods if your goods go into Felixstowe and you want to do your import clearance there, yes, you have to use the MCP system. If you moved it inland to a location that was maybe operated by us, then you would have to use our CSP as the route into customs.
Okay. Well, one question from me in between: do you dream about Brexit and
Nightmares. They're nightmares.
nightmares? I was kind of afraid of that. Yeah. So let's see, two more questions came in. What about empty pallets that are coming back from the UK, customer to the supplier, EU?
Yeah,
By truck.
okay. So that is an interesting one, actually. Pallets and reusable containers. Also, the thing with pallets is that pallets from the UK will have to be suitably heat treated. They'd have to meet the import requirements for wood, and there may well be a shortage of those. There are, if it's a truly empty vehicle, then the systems have got mechanisms to declare empty vehicles. You may still need to do an exit safety and security declaration, where there's no export declaration required. But the reusable containers can get complicated into whether customs take a pragmatic view and say, well, it's not worth trying to control pallets and containers and things, or whether they expect companies to actually declare them and do things like temporary import and re-export. So far, most customs authorities take a fairly pragmatic view on reusable containers and empties, but definitely from a sanitary and phytosanitary requirements, those pallets would have to be declared because of the risk of the wood and wood pests. So I suspect they should be declared, but that's maybe one we can take away, or maybe check with the appropriate customs authorities directly.
Okay, I'll mark it down that we come back to you on that one. So thanks for that question. Let's see, another question. UK, will the country code of GB still exist in UK and Belgium systems after Brexit? XU, XY.
That's an interesting one. I mean, in theory, the export is still to GB, the United Kingdom, whether it's going to Northern Ireland or the Great Britain, the mainland. But the European Union has published two new codes more for internal use. So it's going to be XI, we understand, for Northern Ireland, and XU for GB. But you'll only probably see these in the context of like offices of transit or offices of first entry. So when you declare a customs office, it may be prefixed with XI or XU rather than GB. But as far as I understand, the country of origin, country of destination will remain GB. But who knows? We might find out something different on the 28th of December. But that's as far as I understand it at the moment.
Okay. And let's see, I think this is probably the final I'm getting at the moment. So you still have a couple of minutes to send in your questions. UK FTAs with other regions, and then when with a question mark?
Well, the UK has already signed a number of FTAs with other countries. So it's recently signed, well, in principle with Japan, with Korea. It's got rollover agreements with Norway and Liechtenstein, and another smaller countries like South American countries. I mean, there are some that are missing, like Canada. Mexico hasn't been agreed yet. I think Israel has been agreed. So yeah, there's a link I can probably send, maybe we can include with the slides or something after this, which takes you to a UK customs page, which actually lists all the free trade agreements the UK have managed to sign. But I think it's important to note that these may be showing my colours a bit too much, but these agreements are really running to stand still. You know, these are all carryover agreements that the UK benefited from because the EU had them. As yet, no non-EU agreements have been agreed. So nothing with the US, nothing with Australia, nothing with New Zealand, although they're all supposed to be making progress. But we'll wait and see.
And about North Africa?
There are some, yeah, I can't remember the specific countries. I think they have had rollover with Morocco, Tunisia. I'm not sure about Algeria. So some of those Euromed agreements have been carried over, but they would only benefit UK and the country. they wouldn't necessarily benefit EU unless there was an EU-UK free trade agreement, in which case then you get the really sad term of diagonal accumulation between the three territories.
Okay. So, well, they keep coming in. So apparently, it's a topic that people definitely want to know a lot about. And already, I think if you are, already a customer, and maybe if you're going to Belgium, then please, Nick is actually, he's currently below me, but reach out to Nick as well. He knows a lot about this. But the question that came in is: a small EU UK customs import export in process like Sweden and Norway have?
No. So I think if the question is in Sweden and Norway, you can actually process both the import and the export declaration on one side of the border. So you can go to Sweden and do your Swedish export and your Norwegian import, or go to Norway and do the reverse. That doesn't exist for UK EU. It would be a separate process. The EU export in Belgium or the Netherlands, and then a totally separate office process for the import. They're not simplified in any way. The data set hasn't been reduced. So it would be exactly the same declaration, whether the goods were coming in from China or whether they were coming in from the EU. The only difference may be is whether you pay any duty or not, if there's a free trade agreement or not.
Okay.
And the main reason for that is the UK saying that it wants to be treated as a third country, because if it gives the EU any special arrangements, then it would have to do so for all countries. It would have to do it for the US, for China, for everybody, which is why it had to open up postponed accounting for all imports, because it couldn't just do it for a particular country.
Okay, super. I think there are two questions, but I think we'll just take them offline and we'll cover them directly. So for the two that asked the question, I'll get back to you with the answers, because it seems we're almost on top of the hour. So any famous last words from you, Martin or Nick, or any advice that you want, final advice that you want to give to the people currently in the webinar?
I'll let you go, Nick, first, because I need a
No, yeah. If they have any questions to us regarding especially the Benelux, then they can reach out to me. That's definitely not a problem. So yeah, just also the questions that they just asked, I think those are fairly good questions, and yeah, we can answer them both based on UK end or on Benelux end. Yeah, and they need to be prepared. I think it's definitely going to happen. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd echo that as well, Nick. I think until now there has been some hesitation for companies to prepare, whether that's getting more staff, getting the systems, making changes. But really now we're at the point that the companies have really got to get ready and do what they need to do to be ready by the 1st of January. So.
Well, thanks, and I think that about sums it up. We're very happy that you were able to join us for this webinar. What we'll do, we'll try to keep you as informed as possible. So there's probably a good possibility that early next year, in the transition period, we might do another webinar to give you updates on that. And in the meantime, we'll keep you updated via our Brexit Resource Center and also via our Brexit specialized newsletter, just to make sure that you are totally ready when the time has come. And as Nick and Martin said, it is coming. So with that, I would say thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and hopefully speak to you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.